Hi, I'm Shantae with Sandal Blue Foundation, and I'm so excited for this resource conversation. These conversations are intended to help motor vehicle incident survivors and their families with practical tools, tips, and resources. You guys are so lucky because today we have Ben Rhinesmith with Desert Oasis Therapy, and I cannot wait for you, Ben, to tell everybody
Mm.
about you. Introduce yourself for us, please.
Yes, thank you so much, Shantae. I'm so happy to be here and be a part of Sandal Blue Foundation and help out with these resource conversations. I'm a licensed marriage and family therapist in the state of Utah. Yeah, I conduct uh, therapy for individuals, couples, families, the full age range from little kids all the way up to end of life. And yeah, I really enjoy working with trauma. I really enjoy just exploring people's lives and kind of helping guide them in the trajectory they're looking for.
I love that. Thank you so much. I'm thrilled for us really to jump in. And sometimes people don't really understand what talk therapy means. Could you kind of give us a general
Mm,
overview? Like, because the word therapy or therapist is kind of a large
mm.
genre. There's so many different professions that are within that and people that we could work with. But what is talk therapy specifically?
Yeah, that's a good question because there are lots of different types of therapists. Um, Talk therapy is something where people kind of come into your room and we talk like we are now. But as we're talking, we're trying to kind of understand life and maybe explore people's lives and their experiences and how those experiences have shaped them. And we're really looking to try and help develop healthy habits for people, whether that's relationally or emotionally or maybe cognitively. And I think something that's different about talk therapy with a therapist versus, talking with a close friend or a loved one is that therapists really utilize a lot of theory. And so, as I'm talking to people, it is an interesting process for me because it's a applied theory where I'm really taking a theoretical concept and trying to think about how I can interweave that theoretical concept into the conversation we're having to then hopefully produce a change for people that helps benefit their life. And so, like the therapy that I utilize, I'm marriage and family therapists are grounded in systems theory. So I don't really think of anybody as an isolated island, but rather that we're all interconnected via the relationships we have with others, and then they form systems. And so when somebody comes into my office, I'm not really thinking about just them, but rather where are they embedded and how are these other systems either supporting them or constraining them, and how do we work through them? Um,
Mm.
Another theory that I really like utilizing is narrative theory. And this is this idea that we have lots of stories that were either given to us as we've been raised, or there's stories that we're creating about the world. And I really like to go in and kind of dissect these stories and see, okay, what stories are supporting us again or constraining us? How do we reauthor these stories? And I feel like that's really important with like motor vehicle crashes and big life events that are traumatic of like, okay, how are we going to reauthor this? Like, how does this story now shift? And I think coming into talk therapy can be a really nice place to explore that and kind of help figure out what that might be because a lot of times your life is really upended and it can be helpful to have a therapist that kind of guides that process and kind of hold a container as you're talking about it. And I'm
Mm.
very much grounded in solution focused therapy. And so everybody has strengths. Let's pull those strengths out. Like, what are you doing well? Like, how do we build on that? How do we replicate that in other parts of your life? Like, what solutions are you already implementing? And like, how do we do more of that? And so I think a lot of times when people come into talk therapy, they think it's going to be this like dreary, like, oh, it's so heavy and hard. And like, it certainly can be that at times, but it doesn't have to be that all of the time. That it can be a very empowering time. It can be a time where you feel really strong about yourself and you can see your strengths coming out and develop those relationships. And so it can be at times actually kind of a fun or enjoyable experience. It doesn't have to all be hard and challenge.
Oh, I love this explanation so much because we all have stories that we've told ourselves about what talk therapy or therapy in general could or couldn't be. And
Mhm.
what I'm hearing is it can be what you want. It can be something that really is bringing out the best in you. And from my own experience and from my family's experience, we have seen this where my husband and I are very, very different people, and
Mhm.
our strengths are very, very different. And when we went through talk therapy, we were able to see, like, oh, my strengths help us in our relationship, that system you're talking about, in this way, and your strengths help us in that way. And it did feel like this, like almost a whole new world of opportunities instead of this dark, dreary, we're stuck in the mud and there's nowhere to go. It felt as if, oh, we can use this to our advantage. We don't have to let it, kind of overtake us. Now, one of the first thing that comes to mind when I'm thinking about motor vehicle incident survivors, trauma survivors in general, is this feeling of isolation, which you talked about as well within systems, but also, am I feeling normal? Is what I'm going through normal, or is it just me? Am I crazy? Like, I
Mhm.
feel X, Y, or Z. Am I the only one that feels this way? What are some things that maybe you tend to see people come to you with that is fairly common, but maybe feel isolating?
Mm, yeah. That's a good question, and I really like what you're describing here because it's this idea of like common humanity that we all have similar experiences. We're all going through life, and we're trying our best as humans, and sometimes we do have hard experiences like an accident or a trauma that really does kind of change like how we perceive the world, and then that can really feel kind of unnerving at times. Like, oh my gosh, what I thought was real is not real. And how do I reconstruct my life about that? And I guess my encouragement for people is to recognize that I think life is waves, just like music is waves. And that this experience that you're talking about is going to be a wave where there may be some times where you're like, yep, I got this. We're going to make this happen. And then there may be another time where you're like, oh my gosh, like I'm never going to get through this. And this is just going to be the worst forever. But then there'll be another upswing and you'll start to see more hope again. And so I guess I would just encourage people to be patient and kind or compassionate to themselves as they're kind of riding this wave of emotions as they're going through and recognizing that they are not alone, that there are other people who have experienced these things and probably have a heart to help and probably have a heart to want to support these people through it.
Oh, I love that. And, sometimes when we're going through these waves of ups and downs, we start to label them, right? This is a
Mhm.
story we tell ourselves. We say, hey, when I'm on an up, it's good. And when
Mhm.
I'm on a down, it's bad. Can you talk me through if that is the best approach or maybe what you would recommend to somebody you're doing therapy with?
Yeah. So many use this whiteboard, and so I think that sometimes talk therapy can be helpful because we're talking about things, but sometimes a visualization I think is helpful. And so if I were to think of this as a graph, what you're describing is that when things are feeling up, man, they're feeling so up, and this is going to be amazing. And then undoubtedly there'll be a time where you're saying, oh, things are so hard, it's not going to be good. And then now it feels like it's all going down.
Hmm.
But if I were to visualize this wave pattern that I'm talking about, I feel like life is more like this, where there's ups and downs. But if you were to look at the
Hmm.
overall trajectory is up, but not
Hmm.
every moment is up. And that what I notice is that when people think that they're here, they feel like, oh yeah, this is it, we're all going up.
Yeah.
But then when, let's say, people are here, they feel like, oh, everything is going down.
Hmm.
But sometimes I think what happens is that when people are feeling this down, they actually misinterpret it and think they're back at ground zero and I haven't
Oh,
made any progress. And I think that that's unfortunate because it's negating all of these little uphill wins that you've had. And so I guess feel like small steps really do lead to big changes. And I don't want to disqualify these like little steps that are positive and are moving in the right direction. And so I think a visualization like this can kind of help, I don't know, provide patience to you or understanding.
I love that. I think it's so important for us to recognize that healing in whatever format, healing is not going to be this clean, steady line. It's
Yes,
messy, right? It
totally.
is messy. And that's something that talk therapy can really help us with is to
Yeah,
recognize like, okay, you're in a messy part.
yeah.
Let's figure that out. How does that
Totally.
feel? Why does it feel that way? How do you want it to feel? What do we want to focus on? All of those different types of things. And something
Mm,
that you have taught me personally that I use all the time is not labeling our thoughts as good or bad. Can you talk
totally.
to everybody? Share this idea about when we recognize a thought, what we do with it.
Yeah, definitely. Um, as people go through traumatic things, they're going to have lots and lots of thoughts about what do I want this to mean for me? What does this mean about the world? And as you're kind of wading through this muckiness, trying to make sense of it, some thoughts are going to be productive thoughts, and some thoughts may not be so productive. And just because you have a thought doesn't mean that it's real. It's still just in your head. And think about it like everybody misspeaks at some point, but that doesn't mean that you're stupid or that you don't know how to use language. You just misspoke, like, oh, I just jumbled my words. And sometimes that can be like that in our thoughts. Oh, I thought, a very violent thought against this person who caused the accident. And that feels really incongruent with who I am because I'm a very peace-loving person. And oh my gosh, what does this thought mean about me? And how do I go through this? And I guess to bring some more compassion to yourself, that like it's natural to have lots of different thoughts, but what we do with them is what matters. And so if you're to say like, oh, I have this violent thought, and then you go out and you act on it and you hurt somebody else, well, that's not appropriate. But it's understandable to have some of these thoughts, and it doesn't mean that it's good or bad. You're just processing through things. And something that I think happens in our brain is that there's two pathways in our brain. And this comes from an evolutionary process where there's a fast process in our brain that needs to make quick decisions. If there's a tiger at a watering hole, I need to run, baby, let's go. But then there's a slower pathway, and that pathway takes critical thinking. And then that pathway could be, oh, there is a tiger at the watering hole, but it's on the other side of the watering hole, and I'm in a Jeep, and I'm going to be able to get out of here. And so, it's actually not that threatening to have it here. But that takes time to do that second thought process. And so I think being compassionate with ourselves that maybe our first thought is not our best thought. And that's okay that our first thought isn't our best thought. Maybe we need to get it to our second or our third or our fourth thought before it feels true or congruent with who we are as people.
Oh, that's so important to recognize that fight or flight reflex is not always going to be productive and that we can figure out something, a way to deal with that. And to, I love the verbiage you used of the slower thought, right? The one that's kind of going, okay, wait, I gotta wait for that one to come and hit me because it's not going to be my first thought. It's not going to be my first reaction. Now,
Yeah.
something that I've noticed happens so frequently, and this happened with me as well, and my family, is the traumatic event, right? The car wreck for us, it was all of my thoughts. And I
Mm-hmm.
felt as if it was taking up every ounce of mental capacity, all of my thoughts, whether I was asleep or awake, doing something, resting, whatever. It was all of my
Mm-hmm.
thoughts. What would you tell somebody that's going through that when they feel like that trauma, that event is really just taking up all of their bandwidth?
Yeah. That's pretty normal. Welcome to the club. Like, that's okay. Like, that makes sense to have it be that way because the way in which you were constructing the world is one way, and now you've had this traumatic experience, and now so you're gonna have to reconstruct your world, and that's a very large process. Let me pull up a graphic here for you. Sometimes I think of it as like this, where we're talking about grief here. And at first, and when I let me back up. When I speak about grief, I want to be careful here because I have a very broad expanse of what grief means.
Mm,
And grief, I think in general, people think of like a loss of like a friend or a family member, and that certainly can be a grief process. But when I'm speaking about grief, I'm speaking about it in a larger sense. And that could be a grief of what you thought your life was going to be. I thought I was going to go and play soccer, and now I got in a car wreck and I can't walk. And now
mm,
I'm grieving the loss of what I thought my life was going to be. And now I'm grieving the loss of the capabilities that I did have. And now I'm grieving the loss of these other relationships. And so grief can be a larger, when I speak about grief, I mean in a larger sense.
yes.
And I think of it as like a jar here. And when you think about grief at first, it takes up all of you.
Right.
But then over time, people think, oh, that grief is going to get smaller. But that has not been my experience. Grief is really large. But then over time, you will keep growing and you will
Mm,
keep expanding and you will get bigger and you'll be able to grow around this. And so it won't take up as much space because you will keep reconstructing your life and moving forward with it. And it's it, but I don't want to deny that it is there. Like you can't say like, oh, I got in a car wreck and oh, now everything's cherry. Like that did happen. Like that was
yeah.
hard. Like that was challenging. Like you can't go back and like just not have that happen or deny that. Like it impacted you, and so it is there, and you're expanding around it.
Yes. Oh, that's so, how much hope does that bring? This analogy has changed my narrative and my story, my perspective of things so drastically because instead of feeling like, oh my gosh, what do I do? My trauma's not any smaller. I'm at the 1 year mark and this random family party triggered me and like what's wrong with me? Like the trauma is still just as big. Instead, recognizing, like, nope, it's still going to be there. The event, the trauma of it, the grief of all of the things that I've lost and that I'm mourning of their loss, as well as my life jar is going to expand. I'm going to have more room for other experiences. And then my mind will be able to think of other experiences because my life jar, so to say, has expanded. And so then there are other moments that I can feel. And so when that grief or that trauma comes back up, I'm not freaking out as much, going, wait, you're
Mhm.
supposed to be gone. Like, why are you still here? Instead, I'm going, oh, yeah, yeah, you're still here. Okay. Again, back to it's not good or bad. It just is. But my life jar has expanded. I have other experiences that I can, witness and be a part of and be hopeful for. That's such a helpful analogy. Thank you so much for that.
Yeah.
Now, when we're talking to survivors or even caregivers where this event is such a big part of right now, right? They're
Mm.
physically healing, they're financially set back, they're mentally struggling with all of their perceptions and systems being shattered almost.
Mhm.
What is a practical tool? What is something that they could do that would kind of help them to be able to work through and not sit in that quite so heavy thing as long?
Yeah. I mean, I go back to relationships, like reaching out to other friends and family and going and doing other activities and um, sometimes I feel like people like are so in the grief that sometimes they like don't feel like they can allow themselves to have moments of goodness because it feels like almost disrespectful to the things that are happening. And I guess I would
Yeah.
challenge that even amongst hardship, you can still have moments of goodness, and that doesn't disempower or diminish the challenges that are happening here, but that it maybe we just need to go out and go to a movie and have a good laugh, or hey, maybe we need to just sit down and play a board game together, or I don't know, watch the sunset and have a nice cup of lemonade and just enjoy a moment of solitude there. And I guess I would one of the things that I think is interesting in this process, like coming from a solution focused mindset, a lot of times people talk about triggers and, oh, I was so triggered by, driving down the same road or by seeing the same car or something like that. And I guess I would like to try and challenge that. Yes, there are triggers, no doubt, don't hear me wrong, but that there are also glimmers, that there are little signs that things are maybe going right. And I think that those deserve space too. Maybe it's oh, I heard keys jingling and that wasn't crazy to me. Like, oh, like that was cool. I thought of a dog actually, and like, oh, that's fun. Okay, and oh, like I was out gardening and I was really happy to see this bee land on my flower and like know that my garden was being pollinated. Like, oh, how wonderful! These things are still growing. Oh, that's so nice. I can still grow too.
Mm.
I think looking for some of those like little glimmers, like what are the little things that are signs that life might be okay, I
Oh,
think can be helpful.
that's so beautiful. And it's so helpful because what I'm hearing is we're not we're not discrediting, the
Hmm.
challenging times, the times that are dark and hard
Yeah.
and lonely. Those things
Yeah.
exist. They're going to
Mm.
happen. They're going to be a part of this experience. And, right, not but, and there's
Yeah.
going to be all of these amazing moments that can happen too. And the biggest thing that I'm feeling from you is that there's hope.
Mm.
There is
Yeah,
hope. There is hope for other things. And
definitely.
that using a talk therapist is something that can help you identify both of those things. I know for myself, I needed help with both. I needed to
Yeah.
know how to hold space for those times that, like, I'm ugly crying
Mm.
and it sucks and it's hard and it's dark and it exists.
Yeah.
And learning how to hold space for those glimmers. It makes me emotional, but for those glimmers and for those really, really awesome moments that exist at the same time, that our
Mm.
trajectory is it's going up and down, but overall we're going up, that we're holding space for both. Ben,
Yeah.
I appreciate you so much. And before we close up, is there
Mhm.
anything that you wish I would have asked about or that you'd like to leave listeners with today?
Yeah, I have one large concept that I think might be helpful to people. And I very much think about the world in a postmodern philosophy way where I think reality is relative. And so each person is in their own reality. And if we're talking about systems theory, let's imagine that we have a family. And let's imagine this family was in a traumatic accident. And each person is going to have their own story and their own perception of this. But then the family as a whole is also trying to create a narrative or a meaning about this. And that can sometimes be challenging when people are in different stages of grief. And let me just show this real quick here. Yeah, so these are common stages of grief. And what I want to say is that this is not a stepwise progression, but
Hmm.
rather common things that people may experience. And that you may go from one stage to the next and then back again. And so I think at first there's this initial shock. Oh my gosh, what is happening? And then there's some level of denial. No, 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 we couldn't have actually gotten in an accident. And some type of anger comes up. Oh my gosh, I can't believe people would be driving so recklessly and they would be so unkind to others. And then some type of bargaining. Oh man, if I could just like, please God, like do something different. Like I want it to be, I want,
Yeah.
but it just can't be. And then I think there's some level of depression that my life is not the way I wanted it to be. But then I really like this idea of testing of like, okay, how might I move forward? What
Hmm.
might that look like? And then eventually some level of acceptance. Okay, yes, I am moving forward and this is the way to do it. But if we're talking about each person existing in their own reality, different family members may be in different stages at different times. And
Hmm.
I think that's okay. It's okay for one family member to be angry while another is testing. And that doesn't mean that one is better than the other, but that we're all on our own path of healing. And that we don't all have to come together as a family unit and say, nope, we're in this stage and now we're in this and now we're in this, because
Hmm.
it's too rigid. But I think rather being kind to each other and acknowledging, yep, it's okay to be angry today. That's a normal experience to have here. And I don't need to say that you're bad for that. Like, yeah, this is terrible what happened. It's justifiable to be angry about it. Not
Yeah.
justifiable to be mean and hurt somebody about it, but justifiable to be upset about this.
Right.
And I think holding space for all of these, for all of the different family members at the different moments is nice because that can fluctuate. I mean, from even like in a conversation, you might start the conversation, and by the end, you may be in a different stage, and that's
Yeah.
okay. And it's okay to have this fluctuation, and yeah, just want to normalize that for people.
I love that. I before you take this down, just a question that I have. So there's an acceptance phase. You didn't talk about that yet. Is it
Right.
normal or does it happen that you reach acceptance but then still bounce back? You talked about bouncing through the other ones, but does that
Yes.
happen that like you can reach acceptance and still get back to, denial or whatever else?
Certainly. Certainly, there may be some type of experience that comes up where you feel like 5 years later, you're like, yeah, man, I feel really good about this. And then all of a sudden, you're having a conversation with somebody and they say something like really rude,
Mm,
unkind. It doesn't feel authentic to you. And then that may bring up anger for you. No, wait, that's not true. Like I'm angry about this.
yeah.
And that's okay to have that as well. Kind of again to that jar analogy that impactful event or that trauma is still there. It's not
Right.
like acceptance as in like, oh, wash my hands, it's all done, no big
Yeah.
deal. Like it's not like that. Like
Yeah.
it's still there. And I think about family members, like one of my close friends was killed in an accident with a gun, and his mother still grieves that. That was
Yeah.
13 years ago. And she still grieves that at times because that is authentic and honoring to her son because he was so impactful in her life and so meaningful in
Yes.
her life. And for her just to be like, yep, that happened, whatever, and like total acceptance, I think would be not honoring of who he is. And so it's okay to bounce again back and forth between these.
Yeah, perfect. Thank you so much. I think that understanding the stages of grief, because like you mentioned at the beginning, grief isn't just loss of life. It can be, but it's
Mhm.
not just loss of life. And when you go through a major event like a car wreck, it holds there's grief about a lot of different things. And depending on who it impacted and how it impacted and when it happened and how it happened, it kind of expands what that can be. And so recognizing that the stages of grief really apply to you, even if there wasn't a loss of life, as well
Mhm.
as your caretakers and your other family members and your support systems. When you're talking about all the people in your family, just the systems around you. It may even be impacting a coworker for whatever
Definitely.
reason. And we don't have to understand that to recognize, like, oh, I can see them going through the stages of grief as well because of something I went through, because they care about me or because they're a part of my system. It can also
Yeah.
affect them as well. And how hopeful is it for us to recognize, to be able to identify, like, okay, my spouse is going through anger right now. That's okay. Like you said, it's not good or bad. It's not better or worse than where I'm at right now because I'm in denial. Who says that's good or bad? It's not, right? Like, but to be able to
Yeah.
recognize it both in ourselves and in the people that are around us, to kind of, again, hold space for that and know that we are going to bounce through these things and that there will be a level of acceptance at some point, and that we may kind of move back through them multiple times. Like you said, sometimes even in one conversation.
Mhm.
We're not even talking about weeks, months, or years. Sometimes it's going to fluctuate within minutes just because that's how we
Mhm.
process things. That's how our brain's going to go through them. Ben,
Definitely.
thank you so, so much. Is there anything else that you'd like to share or let people know of before we close up?
Mm. There's always support for you. People are more than welcome to come to my office, but there's lots of talented therapists. And I feel like finding the right therapeutic relationship and connection is really important. And so I would really encourage people to reach out for help, like, and find a good therapist that can help them through these things and can build a relationship. And certainly traumatic things are not meant to go through alone. And so I do hope people reach out to loved ones or professionals.
I love that. Thank you so much. And I just would like to add on to that that I I have experienced it, and I'm happy to share that Ben was my therapist, and I cannot express the gratitude that I have for him and for his willingness to use his schooling and his understanding and everything that he has built in his career to help me and to help my family, because I would not be where I am today without having this. There are so many different modalities. There are so many different types of therapists. And if one doesn't work for you, please know that there's another one, that when
Mhm.
you find what you need, you'll know it. And to not stop trying, that there is help. There's help in your own communities, in your systems, and there's also help in professionals, and it's worth it. It is worth it to keep trying to find the one that works for you. Thank you again so much, Ben, for being here. We really appreciate your wisdom and your sincerity and your authenticity.
Well, thank you so much. It's an honor to be a part of this process. Thank you.
And with that, we hope your road gets a little bit easier.